Hi there. Welcome to another edition of Sharing Stories. My name is Ed Doherty and I'm your host. And in today's edition of Sharing Stories, we have a tremendous Medfield couple, the Johnsons, Bill and Ann. Welcome, Ann.
Good morning.
And welcome, Bill.
Good to see you, Ed.
Good to have you on Sharing Stories. And Ann, I got to start with you right off from the beginning. I noticed that you spelled your name Ann with an E. Now,
yes.
Is there a story there?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
I started first grade, Catholic school in Washington, D.C., and I didn't have an E at the time. And the nun said to me, "Are you named after St. Anne?" I said, "Well, I guess so." And she said, "Well, then you have to have an E on it." And I went home and told my mother, and she said, "But you're not supposed to have an E." And I said, "But it looks prettier with an E on it." So that's why I kept it.
And you've kept it all these years?
Yes.
Well, that's terrific. And you're not St. Bill, though, are you, Bill? That we know of?
No.
Not yet. Okay. So, Ann, you weren't always from Medfield.
No, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Lost my mother at an early age and lived for 4 years in Huntington, West Virginia.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
With my aunt.
Right.
And then my father remarried, and I came back to Washington and stayed there.
And Bill, how about yourself? You're also not born and brought up in Medfield.
No, I grew up in Schenectady, New York.
Right.
And many years ago, it seems now.
Right.
But we bounced on. Our family, during the Depression years, moved down to Philadelphia for a period of time. And then we moved back to Schenectady, and then the late 30s, my father took a job down in Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
Right.
And that's basically where I, grew up, going to high school and so forth.
So you're kind of a Rhode Islander.
That's correct.
Now, how did you two guys meet?
You want to tell that story, or should I tell it?
You tell it.
Is it suitable for TV?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's okay,
yes.
then.
We met at St. Anne's every...
St. Anne's?
Yeah, St. Anne's.
With an E.
That's another church in D.C.
Okay.
And they used to have these dances on Sunday night for young Catholics to get together.
Right. Yeah.
So I met Bill this particular Sunday night. Some girlfriends and I went there, and we danced and talked, and I guess we've been together since then.
I guess you have. Now, how many years would that be?
We were married in 55,
Right.
January.
55.
57 coming up.
Wow, congratulations. That's terrific.
It's hard to believe, isn't it, Ed?
It is. That's great. That's wonderful. 57 years coming up.
Yes,
great.
that's right.
Now, what brought you guys to Medfield?
Well, I was working for Kraft Foods down in Washington.
You were in sales. Is that
That's right.
District manager?
Well, I began as a salesman down there.
Yeah.
And in the food service group, which was a small part of Kraft's business. Most of it,
Right.
of course, was retail. And I can't claim to be a super-duper salesman. I inherited a couple of accounts that developed into big accounts and so forth. And after a fashion, I got transferred to the Boston market up here.
Right.
I had worked for this gentleman who was our general manager for New England, and he brought me to Boston after he was up here for a while.
Right, right.
And
How did you find Medfield?
well, our office was over in Needham, but it was just so funny when I think back how in this day and age it'd be unheard of. But I was called into the manager's office down in Washington on a Thursday, and he turned to me, he says, "We got plane tickets for you to go up Monday morning to Boston." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" He says, "Well, you've just been promoted."
All right.
So Ann's down in Virginia.
We were living in Springfield, Virginia at the time, right outside of Washington.
Right, okay.
And so that was...
Well, and, sight unseen, I hopped a plane, came up to Boston, and they put me up at a hotel or a motel, and I was there for a period of time, and that's how it all began. I didn't even know how much money I was going to get. And when you think back in this day and age,
though, right?
that's correct. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because in those days it was use it or lose it.
That's right, absolutely.
And that's how it all began.
Yeah, well, Needham was rather expensive. This was 1965.
It still is, yes.
So we
1955, 65.
65.
Right.
Yeah, and we wanted to have a 4-bedroom house.
You have children?
I have 3 children.
Okay.
Mark, Stephen, and Anne Marie.
Oh, right, okay.
And if you anybody's interested, they're living now, Mark in Florida, Stephen in Medfield, Anne Marie in Arizona.
All right, very good.
But we couldn't really afford a house in Needham at that time. So we ended up, I'm not sure how we ended up in Medfield. Oh, Priscilla Peterson, who was Bill had met her, was somehow, yeah, and we ended up in Medfield, and she showed us a couple of houses, and the one we're in had been sold but didn't go through.
Okay.
So they called and told, because that was the one we
Right.
wanted. It was near town.
Yes.
So there we
That's
are.
the one you're in to this day. isn't it?
Right.
Yeah,
Over
yeah,
on
yeah.
Laurel Drive?
Right.
Very good,
We're
yes.
into that. We've been there since April of 1965.
And it's been a happy years in Medfield then, really, over the years.
Well, it's expand. Oh yeah. I mean, in the beginning, you know, you're taken up with different things, and I worked lots of part-time jobs and so forth. But boy, after I retired, when DeSalle's closed, I retired permanently, and I've really had a great time.
Well, that's
Learned to
that's
play
great.
bridge.
Yeah, well, that's what retirement's all about. And Bill, you know, in retirement, you've been very active in F.O.S.I, and maybe you're best known in Medfield these days for your involvement in F.O.S.I.
Well, you know, and that all happened by pure accident.
Can you tell us a little bit about
We
that?
were, I was with several people over, in those days we were at the F.A.F. Center. That was
the
the
old
room.
F.A.F. Center, right?
Yeah,
And
we went there.
we
That
were,
was the senior center.
that's correct. We were kind of brainstorming the idea that it'd be great if there was a senior center here in
If we had our
Medfield.
own,
And so, you know, we're talking, and while we're talking at our little meeting, in the other part of the room, the ex-police chief, Bill Mann, he was presiding over a meeting of what I found out then was F.O.S.I, F-O.S.I. And that
Friends of Seniors
Friends
Incorporated,
of,
is it?
well, originally in 1979, a group of people created Friends of Medfield Seniors Incorporated,
Yeah.
and which eventually they added Medfield to it, but
Right.
the Friends of Seniors Incorporated was the contraction that spelled out F-O-S-I,
F.O.S.I, everybody calls it, yeah.
and so I'm listening to the F.O.S.I meeting on the other side of the room, and I kind of moved over and was listening and raised some questions. And Bill Mann, with his folder, said, "Bill, why don't you take over
He was
F.O.S.I?"
the temporary head of F.O.S.I.
That's
at the time.
correct.
Jerry Doucette had died.
That's
Yeah.
correct. That's
Yeah.
exactly
And
right.
Bill had taken
and
over.
so I knew nothing about the organization, and of course, you know, I started to read. A few papers were in the folder.
Well, when he handed you the folder, I guess that kind
That
of
was
meant you
it.
were
That
in-
was
that was your
the
inauguration.
lifestyle of F.O.S.I. And so, you know, people are talking about it's a nonprofit organization, and I took an attitude, well, you know, prove it to me. Well, everyone's looking around. So first thing I did is I contacted the IRS office in Boston,
Right.
and basically introduced myself and over the telephone to them, and they in turn sent a package of papers and so forth that I had to fill out and send it back to the State House. But the interesting thing was I'm getting the impression the IRS knew nothing about us, and as it turned out, I started going through the whole procedure. People would say to me, well, how's it going with F.O.S.I? I said, I don't know. I'm going through this administration of checking. I'm talking to, then I got talking to the IRS in Cincinnati. I was directed there, and our little organization, I didn't have the nerve to even take money out to pay for, we didn't have a petty cash account because we didn't have any money. And so eventually I ended up dealing with IRS in San Francisco, And we got accreditation with them, and that's how it all began.
And we're legal now. F.O.S.I's
That's
legal.
correct.
IRS approved.
We send our tax returns in. Fortunately, we don't pay taxes, but it's a procedure, and I've tried for 3 or 4 years to get us to have the nerve to have a CPA do the tax work. I have been doing it and so forth. And
but F.O.S.I's been a very beneficial program for the seniors. Now, the BRIC program, is that part of F.O.S.I, or is that separate?
You know, when we moved into this new building, and I'm talking to Roberta Lynch, the director, we had a small amount of money in the bank account. And I don't know how it all came about, but I did a Google search and so forth on some fundraising ideas and so forth. And one of them I found was this company down in Miami that sold these engraved bricks.
Yes.
Bricks R.S. is the name of the company. And we started, and I've had good luck with the local newspaper there, the Hometown Weekly, giving us some space and so forth. Yeah. So I started just letting people know what we were trying to accomplish. And we began simply by getting applications from people to buy these engraved bricks, which we still do.
Which are here at the center.
That's correct. And so we had an area which is surrounding the flagpole out there. And the flagpole was donated by some family in town to the COA. So, I mean, we've been a bunch of beggars from day one. And
nothing wrong with that.
That's right. So a combination of things that the original concept, the highway department, Ken Feeney's group, they had some bricks, blank bricks, down to the garage area.
Right.
So they laid the space out, the rectangle that surrounds the flagpole out there, and little by little we started to get the engraved bricks. They would come in, and I think it could have been me, or it could have been Roberta Lynch out there with the trowel, popping up the blank brick and dropping the engraved brick in. And that's how it all
engraved
began.
several $100.
We have, I'll tell you,
already.
Well, we've gone over 100 bricks, and that's been the lifeblood of us starting to get a cash reserve.
Right.
And I mean, we have been just fortunate over the years. Contributors.
What other fundraisers do you have, Bill, or do you have any?
We don't have a fundraising. I've been challenged by people. Why don't we have a fund drive, like a thermometer? My attitude is, if we do that and somebody writes a check, that may be the first and last time we see these folks and so forth. So we've gone along on a presentation of hopefully people contribute.
Right.
So I like to think at least what we've been doing must be successful, because we've had a terrific run with our contributors. We're able to do so many things.
You know, Bill, before we sign off today, we do want to make a point of, you have a website, right, for F.O.S.I, of maybe putting that on the screen so that the viewers can consider making a donation. It's, all the money that would go there would be used for projects around the senior
That's correct.
center.
What we take in is pretty well balanced out as to what we spend here. We finance, well, I shouldn't say finance, we subsidize a lot of the programs that the COA has been doing.
Well, you had were you involved in the grills this summer, as I recall?
Yeah, we've had cookouts here that have really turned into events, because just this past summer, after wanting it for a long period of time, we had a grassy area out in back of the center, uneven, the lawn out there, and it was unsafe really for some of the seniors who sometimes have to use walkers and whatever. So we were fortunate. We received some grant money from Dedham Savings Bank, contributed, F.O.S.I contributed a certain amount of money to it, and we now have, it's better than 1,000 square feet, a poured concrete patio area out there.
It's beautiful.
Which eventually we find the sources and so forth of money. We'll put some sort of a canopy or pergola type of roof covering over it to deflect the sun rays. So it's
Well,
been
the money has been well spent. The money that you've
There have been other
raised for
things.
us.
Oh, yeah.
What are some
What
other
about
things,
all
Ann?
the bingo equipment
Oh,
that
gosh,
they
yeah.
Oh
purchased?
my God!
Well,
That's a big thing here.
It usually starts out, Roberta Lynch will say to me, well, Bill, does F.O.S.I have? And I'll say,
And
how
you say
much?
yes.
How much do you need?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
reaching for your pocket, huh?
But like, we had a lot of items left over from the annual yard sale that
Which
was
is
set
a
up
fundraiser.
as, in the area of the foyer here, Christmas items and so
Yes.
forth, which has been well received by the people. And we needed a nice display cabinet. We had one down in the rear of the building that was of oak, and Roberta didn't like that for up
Didn't
here
fit with
because
the
it's all
decor.
cherry
Match.
wood.
Right, correct.
So I did a Google search and I found out an upright cabinet that was one of the furniture stores and so forth. So now we have a beautiful cherry wood display cabinet that is being well received by the people who come in here.
And we focused in one of our shows on Medfield TV, the cabinet
Yeah,
with all the
yeah,
nice
yeah.
Christmas things in there,
Yeah,
holiday jewelry, etc. in there.
Oh,
yes.
they have a lot of jewelry in there
they
year
do.
round. Lots of.
It's just interesting how it's all developed.
Well, one of the nice things about your efforts with F.O.S.I and the Senior Center in general is, did you raise a lot of funds for their own events?
Yeah.
Just, you know, we do get a certain amount of subsidy from the town, but a lot of the funding that goes on up here is self-generated.
Yeah, you know, F.O.S.I, we received no financial aid from the town or the state.
Right.
Years back, that was asked of me, you know, why don't we do this and do that? And I
You
said,
bought the
well,
riding, the riding more and things
oh
like
yeah,
that. They
gosh,
bought.
riding more because we have a large
You're like
expense.
the rich uncle.
Well-
The riding more. That's right too.
Hey, as long as the well doesn't run dry. But it's
You
been
did get a
interesting.
riding mower for the center this
We
this summer.
we
yeah.
well, the
was
town
F.O.S.I.
plows our driveway out, but it used to pile the snow on the sidewalks, and Roberta and the bus driver would be out there hand shoveling these piles of snow, and so we went out and we bought a pretty good size power snow blower.
So you can move that up to park the
And then
van.
the strange thing is, for some reason, we don't get our grass cut by the town. They cut the area out there on the street. So we had retired people, 70 years old, out there pushing a lawnmower around.
Oh, that's
So
not
then
bad.
we bought a riding tractor and so forth. That was like $700 or $800. And but I just say we've been blessed that
They've
we're able to
done a
do
lot.
these things. Yeah, yeah, it's just
Another good use of F.O.S.I funds, but it's also it's a good reminder for our viewers out there that it's a great organization to contribute to because your money's going to be well spent.
Yeah.
you
We
know.
don't take any salaries. We don't have expense accounts, and
And you do a lot of good. You do a lot
well,
of good for the
it's
seniors.
been
you know.
interesting. Yeah,
And
it's been
that's
fun.
wonderful. Bill, I'm going to change course with you for a second because you reminded me we were talking about the snow and the snow shoveling. That you and I have talked about this before. That you were, I won't say upset, but you were a little bit upset about the handling of the what happened in town at that last storm we
Yeah.
got, where we lost a lot of power. In fact, we lost all our power. And your concern was what's going on with the town's emergency plan or a lack of emergency plan or whatever. Maybe you care to.
Yeah, you know, it was really puzzling because we had folks coming in here who didn't have power at their house. And
Right.
elderly people, you know.
Well, hardly anybody had power.
That's
you
correct.
know, we were-
And Roberta and I were talking about should we stay open? Because, you know, we furnished the coffee and we had some pastries. And
Did you
things.
have heat here?
We were
Yeah.
operating. They had the heat and so forth.
How? A
Well,
generator? Or?
no, we don't have a. We've
We did-
tried to consider a generator, and I think perhaps in time we'll have one through the town. But you know, we were fortunate. This particular area had power,
It
Yes.
did. Okay.
Yes.
and but like I said, we had people drifting in, and I was just surprised that if you called, or I assume they were calling the police department, the fire department, and where could they go just to stay warm and so forth. And I heard rumors that perhaps the high school was open, which I don't know if it actually was, but they
I have heard that they were open, but I'm not sure
I heard-
facilities there because they have, you know, male,
Showers
female
and-
showers that people could clean up. But anyway, I think it's like everything else. Things happen, and maybe results will eventually come from. But we're looking into the next step, you know, because the Council on Aging does not have a big full staff of people.
Right.
It's all volunteers, and a lot of us are not getting any younger. So it's just situations that I think people should be aware of. I always said, what would happen if we really had a problem here?
Right.
So I think the
Well,
town.
I think you've raised a very important topic, Bill. You know, when we lose electricity, it's an inconvenience, but it's more than an inconvenience for senior
Yeah.
citizens
Yes.
because if
can't
it's during the winter and we don't have heat,
That's right.
there's some big problems, and it can be life-threatening.
Yeah.
And you know, we can all try and call around and help each other, but you know, we really do need a plan of action.
Yeah.
Of what do we do? You know, is the senior center going to be open? And how do you get here? And what, you know, what's going on? I'm hoping the town does have some kind of a plan. I don't happen to know what it is, but I'm going to find
I'm
out.
of the opinion at this stage that they are seriously considering using.
And we'll follow through with Medfield TV. I can guarantee you we will follow
That's right. Medfield TV is a good voice to this area.
Well,
and
we
so
try to be.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Aditi, our director, is very enthusiastically supporting these type of things, and I'm
Yes.
sure she'll be on this in no time. You know. Well, you know, it's been interesting to talk to you guys about things. We could go
been a
on
lot of
forever
fun.
about all the different things that we have gone on in the years. And it's so good to see you, Ann, with the knee, my friend with the knee. I'll always remember your story. If I call you St. Ann, you'll understand. Right? And Bill, thank you so much for being
It's
with
been
us
a pleasure.
today. You're a wonderful guest, a wonderful friend over the years. You guys do so much for Medfield, particularly for the seniors. You know, it's just nice to have. People say Medfield's a good town. Medfield's a good town because
is a
Medfield
good-
has good people.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's a
you're
good
great
town.
examples.
Oh,
A wonderful couple here of a good Medfield couple that contributed a lot of day to day. A lot of you may know them, a lot of you don't know them, but now you do know them, the type of people that live here in Medfield that make it such a wonderful place to live. So I'm going to sign off for now.
Thank
Thank
you very-
both of you for being
thank
my
you
guests.
very
Thank you very much.
Glad to have you.
You're very kind.
And thank you for watching, sharing stories, and thank you, Peter, for doing all the groundwork to get us on camera this morning. Thank you, Aditi, for lining up our guests today. Thank you, Hong, back at the studio, for putting all this together for us. We'll be watching for you on TV. And so for you folks out there that are watching today, take care of each other. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you both. You did a nice job.
Very good. Thank you.
And it's not-
Production support provided by Medfield.tv. Access to our community.